friends, I'm Steph from Cheapskate Cook and welcome to my kitchen. Today we are going to talk about Christmas cookies. My very favorite thing to make during the Christmas season, especially these rolled cut out sugar cookies. So much fun, so delicious. So the question is, what do you do with your favorite desserts when you are learning about real food and whole grains and natural sweetener and all of these different things, but you still want to enjoy some of your favorite recipes? Or what do you do when you are dairy-free and you've discovered that you're sensitive to dairy and now butter, the best thing to ever happen to Christmas baking, is off limits? I'm going to show you a couple of tips and we're going to show you how you can save money and eat healthy along the way, and I hope it's going to encourage you and empower you this season. First, there are some very simple substitutes that you can use for your Christmas baking, whether you are making a quick bread or cookies or candy or all the different treats. I'm going to show you how you can swap certain ingredients with some more whole food alternatives, and I'm going to show you the little budget-friendly tips along the way. Not too much healthier because this is dessert, so if you want to be healthy, maybe grab an apple. And I'm going to show you how we make our very favorite sugar cookies dairy-free. Also, I am very guilty of over-healthifying dessert, and so I want to make it very clear that these are not healthy cookies, these are healthier cookies. Just different ways that you can tweak a recipe to help it fit your needs right now. The first tip I want to give you is for if you are dairy-free. So we all know that butter is delicious, right? It makes everything better. But when you're dairy-free, obviously you can't use butter. Now there are a lot of expensive dairy-free alternatives out there, so I'm going to show you what has worked for us while we have been on a really tight budget working with dairy allergies and dairy sensitivities. First, when you are baking cookies and you are combining like butter and sugar first, so think when you make a batch of cookies, then you almost always have to mix the butter and the sugar and whip it all up. So what we use is this guy right here. This is organic palm shortening. You can find it online on like Amazon. You can find it at Sprouts or Whole Foods. I think even some Walmarts have started carrying this right now. And basically it is a shortening that doesn't have any dairy in it. Now, if you don't know this, like regular shortening at the store, like Crisco brand shortening, has some dairy in it. It is not safe for people who have a real dairy allergy. Now this might change depending on the brand or depending on whatever, but to be safe, we've always used this. You can see all the little fancy stickers on here. We've got a Rainforest Alliance certified palm oil. It is fair trade certified, it's organic, it's non-hydrogenated, it's non-GMO project verified, all sorts of good things that go along with this. So we buy this. It is a little more expensive than, you know, your average shortening, obviously, but we just save it for those few cookies that we really want and you really need to have that butter substitute for. So this is what we use for butter. Milk is a really easy substitute. You can use any kind of dairy-free milk that is out there. Obviously, whenever you make a substitution, it's going to change the consistency or the texture or whatever of the finished product. That's just the result of substituting ingredients. But we have always been happy with the results from using almond milk. So we always get the unsweetened variety because if you're using it in baking, it's already sweet, so why add the extra sugar? And plus, if you get the non-vanilla flavored, you can use it for all kinds of other dishes. It doesn't have to necessarily be a sweet one. You can also use oat milk, you can use coconut milk. Honestly, what I've done is I've just blended some almonds with some water in my blender and then put it through a strainer to get all of the almond chunks out of it, and then I'll bake with it. Obviously that's going to not give you consistent results all of the time, but it is a budget-friendly alternative that has served us well over the years. There are also a lot of recipes out there for making your own rice milk or making your own oat milk, both of which are very inexpensive, and you can use them in baking and it works just fine. It's a very budget-friendly alternative. Some people say that you can substitute coconut oil for butter in a baked goods recipe, and I would say that you can do maybe half to a third of the amount of butter that it calls for with coconut oil if you really want to, but coconut oil is a very different consistency and it leaves the baked goods very oily if you use all of it. If it's a cookie, then I would try starting with a third coconut oil and then maybe some of the shortening if you're dairy free, or butter if you aren't, and just kind of work my way up and find what works for that particular recipe. Okay, let's talk about flour. I could go on and on and on with all the different varieties of flour, all the different combinations, different ways that you can make your cookies better or your quick breads better, but here's the easiest thing you can do to make your cookies just a little bit better, and that is to substitute your white bleached flour with some kind of unbleached flour. This is King Arthur brand because that is the least expensive version that we can find, and because we're trying to eat non-GMO stuff, and this is just the most budget-friendly version. But there are lots of store brand unbleached flours that you can use. It's just a little bit better. The next thing you can do is try to substitute some of your white flour with whole wheat flour. This is just whatever you can find at the grocery store. We try to find a non-GMO variety, but sometimes we just have to get whatever is the least expensive. And I would not recommend trying to use all whole wheat in your recipe if you are not used to eating whole wheat, because it does change the texture, it does change the flavor slightly, and it's just gonna go over with everybody better if you try to not make the dessert too healthy. If you or a family member is sensitive to gluten, I highly recommend that you try finding a spelt flour, or maybe a sprouted wheat flour, or there's even like sprouted spelt flour out there. And that helped our family when we had gluten sensitivities. Our kids couldn't handle regular flour, and so we had to get spelt flour. And that can get really, really expensive. So the tip that I'm going to share with you is one that's kind of out there, kind of advanced, but it is one of my favorite ways to make bread because I love bread, and good bread is expensive and I don't want to give up good bread. And that is to buy your own grain mill, as in the thing that takes the wheat and turns it into flour. It's just a little bit bigger than a blender, and you can store it in your kitchen, and then you can grind cups after cups after cups of flour and use them immediately in your recipes. We love having our grain mill. It has made the most delicious whole grain baked goods, and it was very budget friendly when it came to having gluten sensitivities and needing to buy spelt flour, which is usually extremely expensive, but with the grain mill, we could actually afford it on our tight budget. With freshly ground flour, depending on the kind of wheat that you get, if it's like more of a white whole wheat, which is just another variety that's very soft and fluffy and perfect for things like cookies, I use all whole grain in this recipe because it's delicious and it's perfect and it's awesome. But if you are buying regular whole grain from the grocery store, I only recommend to use about half if you're going to be really happy with the results and it's not going to taste too much like a savory thing and you want it to taste like an actual dessert. When it comes to frosting and sprinkles and decorating your cookies, there are all kinds of ways that have worked for us over the years. When my kids were little and they were just excited to eat something that was shaped like a snowman or a reindeer, we just decorated it with like raisins or cranberries and boring stuff like that. They didn't know any better and it was fine. As they got older and started realizing that other people's Christmas cookies are prettier and more brightly colored than ours, we tried to track down some natural food dye-free varieties that we could use. We also, for a lot of years before we could find natural food dye, we just used white frosting. And it was fine, nobody cared. This year we found some sprinkles from Aldi that are dye-free, and that's what we used for our Christmas cookies this year. This was a special treat because we usually don't get this kind, and it was great. The kids had so much fun with it. And we could also cut down on the amount of frosting that were on the cookies, because some of the cookies we just decorated with the sprinkles before we baked them, and that way you don't frost them afterwards and it's just a little less sugar for us to eat. When we were finally able to find some natural food dye for our cookies, it was so much fun, and that's just what we've taken to using. You can find all kinds online, like on Amazon. You can also find them at Kroger or Sprouts or Whole Foods. Keep in mind though that natural food dyes are not as true to color as the conventional ones are. Case in point, this was red. That, not the sprinkles. The thing that looks like it should be raspberry flavored, that's just red food dye. When it comes to dairy-free frosting, the easiest, most budget-friendly way we found to do it is to just mix a little bit of almond milk and vanilla and powdered sugar. That's it. You really don't need anything else. And here's a tip. If you are trying to eat only like organic sugar, or you've got a bunch of turbinado or something like that, and you don't want to pay top dollar for the powdered sugar varieties at the store, you can actually just take that sugar and blend it in a blender, and you have powdered sugar. The consistency is not always as perfect as the kind that you can get at the store, but if you are on a tight budget, then this works great, and it has worked for us over and over and over again over the years. And now you get to watch the hot mess that is called making Christmas cookies with your children. We had so much fun making this video. My goal is to show you exactly what this looks like in real life when you start adding the real food tips to your Christmas cookie process. We also made them dairy-free for you, and I hope that it makes it a little less intimidating and empowers you to try something new. those are my tips for making your Christmas cookies just a little more real food, a little budget friendly, dairy free if you need to, maybe low gluten. I hope that these tips help you. I hope they encourage you. And I hope you have so much fun making your awesome Christmas cookies this year. Don't forget to like and subscribe below if you want more, and I can't wait to show you more ways to save money and eat healthy. Plus, it is not it is non-hydrogenated. I don't know if I can say that right. Plus, you can see all the little fancy stickers on here. We've got a...
This would be a part where it says, and now we're gonna make the cookies. Is that the part, Mama? Now we're gonna make the cookies. Now. Because, look. 3 patches. I sewed it. Look, but this is what I was like, Mama. Look, I was like this, Mama. We are ready. Almost. Because 3 patches.
3 patches, 3 batches.
3 batches.
Good job.
3 batches of these cookies. Do you like it?
Yep.
Wait, one more thing.
Cheese. Cheese, one more time.
Can I see all the pictures?
Cookie dance.
Do what I do, Mama.
Did you eat a sprinkle? Alright, ooh, that's beautiful, buddy. I gotta get a picture of that one.
But do you have to take a picture of this
Yes.
one? The end.
The end.